Is there such a thing as the perfect show? The short answer? No. Due to everyone having different tastes and what they enjoy, so you will always come across someone that doesn't like something that everyone else enjoys. But damn it, if Nickelodeon's Avatar the Last Airbender ain't the closest thing, I don't know what is. Hello everyone, my name is Saul, and in this video I'm going to thoroughly explain why Avatar the Last Airbender is the greatest masterpiece of this generation. And why, since now it's on Netflix, you have no reason not to watch it. Being it your first or your 100th, since most of us are still trapped in our homes, everyone should go watch this show right now. If you don't already know, Avatar the Last Airbender was an American animated television series created by Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, with Aaron Ehasz as the head writer, and it aired on Nickelodeon for 3 seasons from February 2005 to July 2008. The world of The Last Airbender centers around 4 nations named after fire, water, earth, and air, and are populated by regular people and benders who can control one of these elements. The current avatar is a 12-year-old boy named Aang, and he's the only being in the world who is capable of bending all 4 elements, and has the duty to keep balance in the world. In the beginning of the series, we see that Aang has been frozen in ice for over 100 years, and has missed the majority of the war. And due to his absence, the Fire Nation is closing in on victory and complete world domination. His goal is now to travel the world, master the other 3 elements, and defeat Fire Lord Ozai to finally bring an end to the madness. Oh, and one last caveat to add more pressure to the young airbender: avatars of the past have had their whole lives to master the other elements, while Aang will only have 1 year. Due to Sozin's comet arriving, thus granting all firebenders infinite power and Fire Lord Ozai enough power to burn the world in a single day, Aang is on the clock. Take notes, aspiring creators. No, like seriously, take some notes, because a show does not just become a masterpiece on a whim. A lot of careful and highly detailed planning must go in it first. And this series somehow hits on every major aspect that makes a masterpiece a masterpiece. So finally, let's begin with the most important facet of creating a series. The show's world is very carefully assembled, with a level of detail on par with the worlds of Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, and One Piece. But instead of leaning on Northern European myths as most American cartoons do or did at the time, Avatar instead took inspiration from a variety of Asian cultures, primarily China, but we'll get back to China in a bit. The creative team for the series then went above and beyond when it hired Edwin Zan, the then vice president of a group media action network for Asian American, as a consultant to make sure everything was done in a sensitive manner. But the inspiration does not stop there. Many anime fans love the series so much that they go as far as to call it anime, mainly because it was so heavily influenced by Japanese anime and manga, as most of the comedic effects of the show is shown through expressive facial illustration that us anime fans have grown accustomed to. There's also numerous parallels to the art style and philosophical core to the classic film Princess Mononoke and other Miyazaki films. There is a lot of careful planning that goes into making this series inspired from other cultures. Co-creators Brian and Michael were trying to build something special. You want to be inspired without appropriating. You don't want to accidentally say something about a culture, they stated. One example of them being self-aware is when the team made early designs for the Fire Nation and they were heavily inspired by the Japanese, which was a problem because they were the bad nation, and if all the designs were Japanese, you project a poor message about their culture. So they reworked the art style so it will be more broadly inspired. Which leads to the next genius move. Each bending style is derived from a specific Chinese martial art, and the culture of each nation takes cues from a physical embodiment of the element, along with inspiration from existing real-world cultures. The Water Tribe is based off the Inuit and Serenaki cultures, and its bending style was modeled after Tai Chi. Hungar was the inspiration of earth bending, and was chosen for its firmly rooted stances and powerful strikes as a representation of the solidity of earth. Northern Shaolin, which uses strong arm and leg movements, was chosen to represent firebending. And Bangwa, if I said that correctly, which uses circular movement and quick directional changes, was used for airbending. You really see how these styles also influenced characters using them, Aang is evasive and light on his feet, never attacking, always dodging. Katara keeps a pouch of water like a fanny pack, which he uses to create anything out of water like whips, ice daggers, while Zuko, especially early on, bends fire with unrelenting rage and ferocity. And most earthbenders in the series bend earth with unparalleled strength and determination. But more importantly, it's the way the world itself can express the themes of the series. The Last Airbender is remarkable for its subtle but insightful depiction of how power and inequalities corrupt and poison everything. The harm that the Fire Nation has caused is depicted from the perspective of victims, but also the perspective of the Fire Nation itself. Like their own children being brainwashed in schools to thinking that what they're doing is for the greater good. But it also shows the inequalities within their own people in the Fire Nation. The episode The Painted Lady is when Team Avatar visits a small Fire Nation lake town poisoned by the factory set up by its own nation's elite. This is just damage done to their own people. So you can only imagine the tragedies happening in other nations. In the episode titled Imprisoned, the team stays in a small Earth Kingdom town where anyone seen earthbending is arrested by Fire Nation officials and taken away from their homes as war prisoners. And then in the season 1 finale, we see Fire Nation Admiral Zhao is so zealous he kills the Moon Spirit, ridding the world of the moon in quest to capture the Northern Water Tribe. But it doesn't even stop there. Viewers are also exposed to the inequalities within the walls of Ba Sing Se, the most powerful Earth Kingdom city. Peace is maintained by a secret military police order called the Dai Li, who again brainwash their own citizens and treat the king as a figurehead. Again, just showing how truly corrupt the world has become. The show does a marvelous job in using war to expose the impacts of intergenerational trauma and toxicities of revenge, especially the ways that the cycle of violence hurts the innocent. The corruption isn't only among firebenders, but everyone. There's a waterbending prisoner of war that develops bloodbending as a way to release herself, but then uses it to kidnap innocent Fire Nation villagers as a form of retribution. Then there's Jet, the vigilante fighter, who attempts to drown a whole town of innocent Fire Nation villagers to avenge the parents he lost in a Fire Nation raid. The world the creators built isn't some cookie cutter world. It can't just be seen as black and white. It's a realistic approach on how war can corrupt and infect everyone, from the wicked to the innocent. But the fact that we don't need some constant, if even annoying, exposition to tell us about the world proves what an impeccable job they did creating one. I think The Last Airbender is a show about humans' extraordinary ability to empathize with nearly anyone. Almost every character is given a redemption arc, or a chance to prove their strength in times of adversity. For example, Katara obviously masters waterbending, Sokka masters sword fighting, Toph invents metal bending, despite all being underestimated in various ways. And Aang has his own personal struggles, when he fails to master the Avatar state because he goes to rescue Katara, and in the end how he decides to defeat Fire Lord Ozai by not giving in to rage. Even the villains are given redemption arcs. Jet, after his crimes, helps reunite Aang with Appa, paying the ultimate price in the process. Mai and Lee eventually reject Azula. And probably the best character in the show, General Iroh, is teased to having a very complicated past, but is shown to have the kindest heart. Oh, and we can't forget about Zuko, who, in my opinion, has probably the best character arc in modern cartoon. Zuko, who spends most of season 1 chasing the Avatar in order to regain his honor after being banished by his father, like the best villains, somehow he's sympathetic, while at the same time committing horrible crimes. But can you blame us for being really sympathetic? Who doesn't empathize with him? At the end, he's just a kid looking for purpose and for someone wanting to love him. You could really make a whole video about just Zuko's character and his character arc. Might make one in the future, but I don't want to keep rambling on about him. Anyways, Avatar managed to somehow assemble a cast of characters that depicts the world as it is, with range, identities, diversity, and different experiences. The diversity of characters in this series is second to none. But we'll get to that later because I could go on and on and on about all the other characters that had their own individual arc and stories and experiences, like Jet, the Kyoshi Warriors, Azula, Avatar Roku, Bumi, Teo, and our hero, the Cabbage Merchant.
Security! My cabbages!
No, but in all seriousness, I could go on about how each and every single, even minute character serves a purpose in telling the grand story, and how their own personal journey helps shapes our views of their world. But if I do, that would just take away from the incredible journey that is the show. But with that being said, there are a couple characters I do want to highlight because again, the creative team shows why they were ahead of their time. We are in the golden age of female empowerment among mainstream media, especially when it comes to female heroes, with Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman leading the charge. And I'm a big fan. Growing up with strong females all around me like my sister, my cousin, my mother, and my grandmother, I never had a problem with strong females in media. If anything, I often question why there wasn't more while growing up. Some of my favorite characters in my favorite shows are females like Videl from Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon from, well, Sailor Moon, Taro from Teen Titans, Urza, Lucy, Juvia, most of the female cast from Fairy Tail, and finally Mikasa from Attack on Titan. Obviously there's more, but I think my point's been made. I love strong female characters, and I demand more. And again, this show has a great amount of strong female characters. Obviously we have our two leads being the best in the world at their respective element in Katara and Toph. But the creators did something that not many shows even dare do. They created Princess Azula, Ty Lee, and Mai, and made the three most formidable villains from the Fire Nations female as well. For the first two seasons, we are constantly reminded how great the defenses, the walls of Ba Sing Se are. So when these girls infiltrate and capture Ba Sing Se so easily, we are shown that these girls are not to be messed with. Hell, for the first two seasons, we see what Zuko goes through just trying to capture Aang so he could regain his honor, and how difficult a task that is. But then Azula debuts and poof! We see who's the strongest natural bender in the world. And I think it's genius, and a good message to everyone watching, especially boys, not girls. Hear me out. The Last Airbender constantly spun compelling narratives of exposing systematic sexism, like Sokka underestimating but coming to respect the all-female Kyoshi warriors, or Katara discovering that the Northern Water Tribe won't teach her combat skills because she's a woman, even though she's the best waterbender in the world. And of course then there's Toph, a young blind lady in an extremely wealthy family who's the world's greatest earthbender. The fact that this show from 2005 had the wherewithal to add so much diversity and just colorfulness in its main cast, from a bold young lead, strong female presence, scarred and emotionally damaged antagonist to a blind young lady, has helped the show stay relevant, with new fans discovering it and still being able to relate to it, so many years after its conclusion. Every story has a message, something that we were taught from Aesop's fables. This show's greatest asset is the depth of narrative it has. After the massive success of the first season, Nickelodeon ordered exactly 2 more, which was great because this meant that the story could be tightly plotted right up until a planned ending, something that a lot of shows aren't given. And you usually see this with the writing quality towards the end of a show that isn't given a planned ending from the beginning or rushed to a conclusion due to declining views. With a plan in place, the creative team were truly able to write the message they wanted. This show was able to expose very young viewers to darker subject matters like genocide, authoritarianism, while giving them a framework for understanding these issues. Often that was done by focusing on the emotions of the core cast as they processed these events. This is something that most networks are afraid of doing to this day, as they usually want to keep cartoons simple and boring in my opinion. But when cartoons do get a chance to take this approach, usually greatness ensues. The third episode shows Aang witnessing firsthand the death of his entire nation at the hands of the Fire Nation. We see the team fly to the air temples and experiences Ash's devastation at the loss of Monk Gyatso, who he literally learns has died by stumbling upon his skeleton. Can you imagine the horror he must have been going through? In flashbacks, we see Gyatso treated Aang like a son, shielding him from his duty as the Avatar. We learn why Aang ran away and how he was frozen in the ice. But more importantly, we see Aang for what he really was, or is. Not some ultimate hero that you hear from prophecies and stories and of legend and whatever. But a scared kid, afraid of being alone. The main writer states that if you dumb things down and oversimplify them, it might work for 6 or 7 year olds, but even 10 or 11 year olds will reject these things that don't look like the world around them. Can you craft storytelling with incredible empathy that respects the intelligence of the viewers? Doing this, you build a story with incredible impact to the young that also sticks with them as they grow older. Because what we wrote is still true, we didn't turn it into a lie to make it more palatable. This right here is why the series is so adored. We loved it and understood it when we were kids, and now as a whole 24, soon to be 25-year-old, I still love and can relate so much to this series after all these years. This message that the series contained is one that we can still carry on, especially right now with all the madness that's going on in the world, with police brutality, racism, a whole pandemic. Whatever the case may be, these words still hold true. It's those who are complicit in injustice that must work the hardest to end it, and the oppressed must do whatever it takes to not spread the hate and trauma onto the next generation. This exact message is shown when Katara is finally able to track down the man who killed her mother and decide not to take his life, as she would just be repeating the cycle of hatred. Ihas states, "Despite the dark topics, I hope the core message that comes out of Avatar is about love and characters who are optimistic and will fight for each other unconditionally. Those kinds of relationships matter." For me, there's a laundry list of messages I get from this show. But my favorite one will always be to stay true to yourself, follow the path that you want, and be at peace with it. Whatever message you got from the show, just let me know in the comment section below. I could probably go on for another 10 minutes talking about how great and just beautiful this show truly is, but I don't think I will. I think you got my message already, so I'm going to end it right here. If you enjoyed the video, guys, I humbly ask that you please drop a like, subscribe for more anime and other random content I could think of. The next series I want to discuss is Haikyuu. I've been delaying that video for a while now, but yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.